We have discussed why and how doubt about the science and the scientific consensus concerning human-induced climate change became part of political rhetoric and how that permeated the public consciousness. We have looked at a few examples of climate change myths that are used to cast doubt. As individuals, though, why do we deny climate change? The fossil fuel industry, political lobbyists, media and individuals have spent some 30 years casting doubt on the reality of climate change. The world's 5 largest publicly owned oil and gas companies alone spend about $200 million a year on lobbying to control, delay or block binding climate policy. So what forms of denial are being used to convince the public to delay action on climate change? First, there is the science denial, that the science of climate change is not settled, that there is no consensus, that climate change is just part of the natural cycle. Second, there is the economic denial, that climate change is too expensive to fix. This is a form of self-fulfilling prophecy. Economists estimate that we could fix climate change now by spending 1% of world GDP. However, if we delay to 2050, it could cost over 20% of world GDP. This denial recognises the need for intergenerational equity. Third, there is humanitarian denial, that climate change is good for us, that longer, warmer summers make farming more productive, that plants need carbon dioxide and so more of it acts as a fertiliser, that warmer winters lead to fewer deaths. This denial is particularly pernicious as it solely considers the effect on people living in temperate climates and not those living in tropical climates. Further, it's not even true, but points to the need for international equity. Fourth, there is political denial, that we cannot take action because other countries are not taking action. This denial ignores the historic legacy of greenhouse gas emissions. It further highlights the need to recognise the ethical responsibility of developed nations taking action first. Finally, there is crisis denial, that we shouldn't rush into committing to binding international agreements given the uncertainty raised by the previous areas of denial. But why might we as individuals accept these forms of denial? The answer is our susceptibility to cognitive bias. We are all susceptible to cognitive bias. Recognising this is key to being able to think critically. There are many cognitive biases to which we might be susceptible in the context of climate change. However, we can highlight 3 that pose a cognitive barrier impeding us from making sound decisions with regard to behaviour affecting the environment. First, despite claiming that we want to leave the world in good condition for future generations, people intuitively discount the future to a greater degree than can be rationally defended. Over-discounting the future can contribute to a broad array of environmental problems, ranging from over-harvesting of the oceans and forests to the failure to invest in new technologies to address climate change. We are most likely to discount the future when the future is uncertain, distant, and when intergenerational distribution of resources is involved. Specifically, when people espouse the view that the Earth's resources should be preserved, they tend to think about their descendants. But when consumptive opportunities arise today that would inflict environmental costs on future generations, they begin to view descendants as a vague group of people living in a distant time. From a societal perspective, overweighting present concerns can be viewed as both foolish and immoral, as it robs future generations of opportunities and resources. Second, positive illusions lead us to conclude that energy problems do not exist or are not severe enough to merit action. We tend to see ourselves, our environment and the future in a more positive light than is objectively the case. We all hold a wide variety of positive illusions, yet two are particularly relevant to inattention of energy and climate change: unrealistic optimism and the illusion of control. Unrealistic optimism leads us to believe and act as if the repercussions of climate change will be far less severe than the scientific community predicts. The illusion of control leads us to believe that scientists will invent new technologies to solve the problem. As a result, the unrealistic illusion that a new technology will emerge serves as an ongoing excuse for the failure to act today. And third, we interpret events in a self-serving manner, a tendency to expect others to do more than we do. Different parties are likely to have different assessments of their proportionate blame and responsibility for a problem. Egocentrism leads all parties involved to believe that it is honestly fair for them to bear less responsibility for reversing climate change than an independent party would judge as fair. The problem is worsened not by a desire to be unfair, but by an inability to view information objectively. These three biases, positive illusions, egocentrism, and the tendency to discount the future, can have an interactive effect. After insisting for decades that the scientists are flat out wrong, many of those who have strongly opposed efforts to reduce climate change for self-interested reasons have changed their tune. No longer arguing that climate change does not exist, that humans do not contribute to climate change, or that others are to blame for the problem, they now argue that it would be too costly to respond to the problem. This transition in argument from "there is no problem" to "we aren't responsible" to "it's too expensive to fix" allows the current generation to receive small benefits in exchange for high costs to future generations. In the next lecture, we will discuss the predictions for the future and the reliability of those predictions. Thanks for listening.